Hey, so I really like getting to know people and I like learning how they tick and their backstory so I know where they've come from. I'm going to give a little bit of that to you today. My backstory. You've already read a little bit about it from Steve's perspective. So, to be honest, most of us come from a point where we think our life is just fine. And it's not until diagnoses come from a doctor that we find out how not fine we have been for actually a decade or more. It takes time for disease to enter the body. It takes time for that to happen. And so that's why physical weight gain can sometimes, not all the time, be an indicator of emotional distress that our bodies are under before an actual physical manifestation comes. So I grew up and I rarely missed a day of school. Once my tonsils were taken out at 5, I was pretty healthy for a long, long time. And so I thought that I just never got sick. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started realizing that just because I wasn't getting seasonal sickness did not mean I was well. And a lot of that started to come to my awareness when I realized I had been on antidepressants for a decade. My knuckles would swell every winter and nothing was showing up in my blood work yet. Okay. So by 28, a chiropractor said, hey, why don't you have your doctor test you for this specific new blood test? It's only 2 years old, but since doctors don't tend to be up on a lot of new technologies, it might help to have him test you for this. So I went in, I said, I want you to test me for this specific test. He tested me, and it was at that point my blood work came back at positive for rheumatoid arthritis. Now, by that point, I was in head to toe pain. I clearly remember that Christmas because I was in so much pain. Traveling to see family, head to toe pain, and I had a 6-month-old baby. So 3 kids under 4, and I was falling apart. So I really wanted to look into some alternatives because I had seen what medication had done to people around me, family members, and I didn't want to relive that. But I did know that I was getting the same diseases family members had gotten, and I was getting them 2 to 3 decades earlier than they had. And that is not a healthy place. And on top of that, I had been diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. And what was shocking is when I went in to the specialist, he said, you've had this for years. Didn't anyone ever tell you? And they said, no, they just said it was a thyroid problem. So Hashimoto's disease. Now, I learned a few things along that path. One, I wanted to desperately heal not only me, but my children, because I still didn't come off antidepressants totally at that point. You know, I was still on my learning journey. So I ended up having 4 children before I came off 100%. And I didn't like that. I didn't like seeing me take a medication that wasn't like A grade, like, you know, pretty safe. It was B grade. I didn't like any of that. And I wanted to eliminate whatever I had done to my babies as fast as possible. So not only heal me, but heal my babies. Now, this is something a lot of moms, a lot of women, we want to heal other people and ourselves. We need to start with ourselves. So think about you and think about what you can heal for you first, because when you heal, it makes the healing process rapid for people around you who are ready for your help. And that can be specifically children. The younger children, the older they get, the more they want to have their own journeys. And so you can only go so far with helping them. But in my case, I had babies. They were completely open to letting mommy take care of them. And so it was at that point I started doing some radical changes. I was on my knees praying. I have a very personal relationship with God. And I was like, I need help. And it was at that point I started taking an associate, so a wife of somebody Steve worked with, gave me Breaking the Food Seduction. And I read that and I said, I can do anything for 3 weeks. If there's a 3-week promise that this pain will go away and I don't have to take medications for it, I'm in. And I went and I started buying things we would never stock in our cupboards, ever. And Steve was a little nervous because he's like, oh, there Jenny goes. She's going to go buy all this stuff and then we'll have to throw it away later. But it's all just an effort to see if she can fix something. And it was, that's where I pray, like I honestly pray for every person who watches this video for you to have confidence. Because having confidence to do what you want to do, regardless of what external voices are telling you, is very, very important. You have to have the courage to do it yourself, to stand for yourself, because no one's going to stand for you taller than you can stand for yourself when you have all that that self-confidence in your entire body standing for you. So I was like, I got to do this. I just got to see. And I don't know where that fire ever came from, but it's inside of me and it's always been there. And I'm like, you're not going to be the boss of me. I'm going to be the boss of me. So I did. I bought all the things, and it was 2.5 weeks and my pain disappeared. And then I went out to dinner to celebrate a birthday. And I had meat. And that afternoon, I was in pain again. And so for me, I was like, done. I am on this path, and I am so excited to be on this path. So it was on that path that the healing began. And then more and more things came into my life. And because I have all those at my disposal now, that's why I've put them together in this for you. And I really feel like the timing's perfect for you to have all of this in one course for you to peruse, for you to adapt, and for you to have knowledge of, instead of having to take the time for it to come to you. Like, it's all here for a reason, and you've found it for a reason. And I'm so excited for you to find it. So it was at that point that things started changing for me. And lucky for me, I was living in Arizona. So following a vegan diet was very easy. There was lots of chances for me to find produce that was discounted because it was just days away from going moldy or bad. But that means it was like super ripe. And I would just buy tons and tons of produce, and that's all we would eat. I dropped weight so fast. And I actually discovered that one indication of just how much emotional baggage I had been carrying was constipation. See, I had started becoming constipated at 4 years old. I remember my mom telling me a story about that. And it was common for me not to have a bowel movement every day. But then, after Steve and I got married, he went in for a colon cleansing, and the specialist said, oh, you should always have one at least once a day, but preferably a bowel movement with every meal. And I was like, what? And it still took me a few years to really get to that point, but that's when I realized that I was holding stuff in that needed to move. And food is a fantastic way of giving your body nutrition so your body can move the emotions properly. It's really fantastic to see the connection between both of those, between what you eat and how you move through life and the digestive process, and how that connects. So that's the beginning of my story. The quick version to the end is that soon after that happened, I was introduced to essential oils. And I was like, lucky for me, it was somebody who was a nurse. And so I found her as more of an expert in that field. And she's like, this is what I use for my kids. And so I adopted it. And when I started sharing it, I found that a lot of nurses were attracted to me. And it was so amazing to hear the stories of their personal lives and how excited they were to start using these essential oils because they knew all the red tape. They'd gone into this field to heal people, and all they were getting stuck in is red tape and follow this protocol and don't deviate from it. And they just felt like their hands were tied. So they were so excited to bring that into their own homes. So I did that. Then I did supplements. And it was after I had all of that in place that I found that I was forgetting to take medications. That I was feeling so good, I didn't want to take them, and I would conveniently forget to take them until one day I had not taken an antidepressant in 2 weeks. And I was like, ooh, that could be bad. So I took one, and within 24 hours, I was literally a witch. And there were things coming out of my mouth that I was horrified to hear. I felt like I had no control over myself. And so it was that point I was like, this is enough. Enough is enough. And I told Steve, I'm going cold turkey. Now, cold turkey meant that I had already weaned myself quite a bit at that point, right? Like, I'm done. I'm done with this stuff. I want to see if I can do this 100% natural. Now, I had used the words on my own, but please remember that if you say on my own, you're already setting yourself up for failure. Nobody is doing this on their own. We all have a support system, and he was mine. So I quit, and he was super attentive for 3 months while I was moving through this whole process. And it did take another 3 years for my brain to fully detox from the half-life of the medications that I had been on. But that was okay. That was totally okay with me because it meant that I was healing, that it was eliminating and it was doing it. So 3 years after taking it for 10, I mean, no big deal, right? Now the detox response was, it was mostly heavy metals that are actually in the medications that my brain was detoxing. And it was slow. It was moving through at a proper pace. And I could remember the day I woke up and I was like, it's gone. Like I could just feel that it was gone. And I was free of it. I was so excited. I was like, I never want to take any more medication because I don't want to do this detox response ever again. And so it's just fascinating. It was a fascinating journey for me. And it will be for you too. And you'll have your own story and your own miraculous things to share. But also remember, there's a road and there's going to be bumps in the road. But it's part of the journey. It's part of the learning, and it's to awaken you to things that are still there that you're ready to release. So let's get started.